as we understood last week. He disobeyed God even though he was king, and even though he was in position, God had already identified someone else in the name of David. And Samuel, who was the prophet who was used by God to carry out this process, he cried. He cried, and God says, listen, how long are you going to cry over this? Just get over it. It's done. I have somebody set aside, and he had someone the name of David who actually Samuel did not know who it would be at the time. All he knew was that he was supposed to go to Jesse's house. He went to Jesse's house, and when he got there, as we mentioned last week, he said, listen, Jesse, we're your sons. Have them come by. And they all walked by, and the oil that was supposed to flow symbolically of God's presence and his spirit being upon them, it did not flow. So Samuel said, wait a minute now, is there anybody else here in the house? And so Jesse said, oh yeah, I got an old son here. He's over in the back taking care of the sheep somewhere. Well, send him here. So they waited around, and David came. And when he came, he was the one. And we said last week that God creates opportunities. He creates opportunities. We said that your enemies know your abilities. We also said God gave you the right qualities. God creates opportunities, your enemies know your abilities, and God gave you the right qualities. So today, as we look at it was necessary, David is now helping King Saul. He's the armor bearer because, as you know, when we stopped last week, he was one who Saul now, keep in mind, there's a transition, there's a change in leadership. And so what God does, he's a master strategist. He prepares and he shifts and he moves things. Do you not know that? Have you ever thought about this? For those of you who have been working for years, maybe you're retired or maybe you're getting ready to get into the workforce, you just got in the workforce. Did you ever think about the fact that God creates a space for you before you get there? God knows how to move things around. He moves people around. He'll move somebody. He has a way of doing it. He can touch somebody's heart and they don't know what's happening, but God is looking out for you. He's trying to open up a door for you. And so David he's in position. He's probably trying to figure things out. But what happens is he is playing music before Saul because Saul had this strange spirit that would come over him. He was uneasy in his spirit. And so every time David would play, he's all right. He feels better. So that's where we left off. But we find out that in between this time, there is this giant that keeps coming around, King Saul and God's army, and his name is Goliath. You've heard of Goliath before, haven't you? He's about 10 feet tall, estimated to be, and it's a big dude, 10 feet tall. But anyway, it seems as though some things were happening here. He's making some noise, and for about 40 days, he's saying, I'm summarizing, he's saying, listen, bring it on. Who's going to fight me? I tell you what, you bring them on to fight me. If I kill them, then you all serve us. And all of this. He was making a whole lot of noise. Do you know a lot of people that make some noise? They can just like they're going to do something. Well, anyway, I thought it was interesting. If you look at verse 28, interesting verse. It says, and Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake with the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said, why camest thou down hither with whom thou hast left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. Very interesting, because David had those brothers. Remember I told you he had about seven brothers, and God didn't select them, but he selected David, right? They all witnessed the anointing. So they know that God has a special work for him. So David, he hears about this giant, and he was listening to his father. His father said, listen, I want you to go bring a meal to the boys. So he goes into with the army, and of course his three brothers are there. And so they say, well, wait a minute, this giant, he's making all this noise. He said, well, wait a minute, how could you all sit here and take this? What's going to happen to him? So they tell him, listen, whoever kills this giant, the King Saul, he's going to bless you. He's going to give you one of his daughters and all of this. He says, really, is that right? So his older brother, Eliab, which is what we just heard, he heard him and he says, listen, why don't aren't you going back to those few sheep that you tended and daddy wants you to take care of? That's his brother saying that. I thought it was interesting because his brother knew David's anointing and destiny to be the next king of Israel. He knew it because he saw it. But you know what? If you think about your own life, there are people near you that know the anointing of God on your life, but they won't acknowledge it. They won't help you fulfill it, and if anything, they'll try to block your blessing. Oh, hello, somebody. Some people see God's hand on you, but they'll try to step in and try to stop you from doing what God has called you to do. But you do know that the devil is a liar, and you know that God, no one can stop God from doing what he's going to do. If he's going to do it, he will do it. Tell somebody, God will do it. Yes, he will. Even his own brother, that just got me all weak. I said, wait a minute, his own brother. You have to watch people that are close to you. Don't think that because they blood. Oh, hello, somebody. Don't think because they blood or because you wear the same clothes and you all grew up in the same hood. No. Some people are jealous. Some people are envious. But if God has something set aside for you to do, he will fulfill it. Oh, yes, he will. So here we go. Just very quickly today. What was necessary? I know you're probably trying to figure that out. What was necessary? It was necessary for David to learn the following. Look at verse 34. And David said unto Saul, thy servant, let me set this up before we read this. David says, listen, y'all act like y'all scared, y'all can't go. This giant is talking all of this nonsense, and we serve a living God, and y'all are sitting there. Okay, King Saul, I'll take care of this. Okay, so that's where we are. David said unto Saul, thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him and smote him and delivered him out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and smote him and slew him. Now, why is this happening? Because Saul said to David in verse 33, listen, you too young. You too young. Because see, you don't know what you're doing, boy. You're not able to go against this Philistine to fight him, for thou art but a youth, and he's a man of war from his youth. See, sometimes people think that because you don't meet a certain qualification of age that you can't do the assignment. Hello? But age is not really, when it comes down to doing God's business, God will use anybody. He uses somebody young, he uses somebody old, he'll use anybody. So the issue is, what was necessary? It was necessary for David to learn, number one, how to obey. I hope you caught it. Look at verse 34. It's right there, part 1. David said unto Saul, thy servant kept his father's sheep. That's powerful right there. Because if you look at verse 15, it says, but David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. Then look at verse 20. It says, and David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him, and he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. And look at verse 22. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. So what we see about this young man is that when his father told him to do something, he did it. He knows how to obey. When God is getting ready to use you to do something, he prepares you before you get there. And so David had to learn how to obey. And he learned it by listening to his parents. See, some of you sitting here today, you didn't listen to your parents and you were hard-headed. Some of you still hard-headed, but anyway, we'll talk about that another day. But you think that it's nothing to obey. I don't have to listen. No, God uses obedience and honor and respect to our parents and those that he places over us. And even though all of David's brothers, the older brothers, they were out there in the battle, David was tending the sheep, and his father said, listen, I want you to go bring some food. But say, okay, I'll go bring the cheese. But he made sure, look what he did, even though he was tending the sheep, he left the sheep in good hands. That's what it says, verse 20. He left the sheep with a keeper. And then also in verse 22, he took the carriage he left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and then he runs into the army and he goes to help out and do what his father told him. If you really want to see God move in your life, make sure you learn how to obey. Learn how to be obedient. Amen? Tell somebody, learn how to obey. It was necessary for David to learn how to obey. He couldn't get up there talking about he's going to do this and do that against this giant if God did not teach him how to be obedient. Okay, number 2, look verse 34 through 36. I'll read it again. Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock, and I went out after him and smote him. And when he rose against me, I caught him by his beard and smote him and slew that joker. Okay, it didn't say joker, but you know. Look at verse 36. It says, thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defiled the armies of the living God. Who is he? That's what he says. You know, who's he? So, number 1, he learned how to obey. David also learned what it means to fight. He learned what it means to fight. You know, and part of that, what that means is that you got to learn that in this life there will be some battles. Don't get so cute in here. Don't let people think you all that. Because the truth is, you may look good today, but we all know that every one of us, if we're honest, we have been through some struggle. We have been through some kind of a battle. Even though we look good, we praise God, and God has opened doors for us, but we've been through some things. Is there anybody here that's been through some kind of a struggle? Some kind of a battle? We all have had some kind of a struggle. It's important. God teaches him how to learn that, you're going to have us fighting this thing, young man. Not only you can sing all you want, but there will be some struggles. And in fighting, David learned what it means to be in pain. When you go through things in life, you learn what pain is all about. Some of you, it may be your health. You're dealing with a health issue. Some of you, it may be a mental issue. Some of you, it may be a spiritual battle. Some of you, it may be a social issue. Some of you, it may be a career issue. But one thing you must admit is that we all must go through some kind of a battle. David learned not only how to be obedient, but he learned what it means to fight. How did he learn? Look how God, this is what they call in the business, they call this a transferable skill set. What he did in the field in protecting the sheep, he could do it anywhere. Y'all see that? Okay, for example, if you know how to, let's say if you know how to manage, okay, you're good at numbers, okay, let's say you're good at numbers. You can do numbers in the bank. You can do numbers and open up a store. You can open that up and do that. It's the same skill set of learning the numbers. It's transferable. And what God did is he took this skill set that David had. He taught him and groomed him in the back when nobody was looking but him and the sheep. And he taught him how to fight. I know some of you know how to fight. You know how to box, right? You know how to box. I know y'all looking at me like, what's he doing? Yeah, I guess now everybody take out a gun. They don't need all of that. I guess that's what's happening. That's the problem. But there is a thing where you learn how to fight. Now that's a physical fight, and David had to learn how to protect the sheep. He learned how to protect, he learned how to defend the sheep, he learned how to look after, and he also learned to recognize the enemy. That's important. He learned that when you see that lion coming, that lion's not coming to give you a hug and say, how are you? Same thing about the bear. And you know what, brothers and sisters, you got to learn the same thing. Don't think that because somebody's smiling that they always love you. The enemy will use anybody to come get next to you smiling. Oh, how you doing? And then they got a knife just sticking you right in the back. Not literally. Y'all with me? People or something. The devil will try to use anybody to stop you from doing what God has called you to do. But David learned at an early age. He learned what it meant to fight. Verse 35, I went out after him. So here are these bears, the lion, to come in and they take the sheep. He was paying attention. He knew about his sheep. And when one is missing, he knew about it, went after the animal, and he killed the animal. Isn't that what it says? Yes. And he took it out of the mouth, preserved the life. I caught him by the beard. Look how detailed that is. I smote him and I killed him. I slew both the lion and the bear. He's bad, isn't he? I told you last week, David is a warrior. He knows how to fight. So he says he learned how to obey. He learns what it means to fight. And then also verse 37 says, David said, moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of the Philistine. And Saul said unto David, go, and the Lord be with you. Look at King Saul. He's happy that he has somebody that'll go and do it for him. Makes him look good. The other thing we learned here is that the Lord gives the victory. David, even though he was fighting, he knew that God got into the fight with him and gave him the victory. See, the problem is when we get victory and we think we did it ourselves. Oh, hello, somebody. It's not about you being able to do it, about me being able to fight and get victory. But when God steps into a situation, he's the one that makes it possible for us to gain the victory. Somebody ought to give God praise just for that. All glory and honor belongs to God. And when we learn that it is not us and we learn it is God, it helps us to be more effective in all that we do. Because some of you who are sitting right here, you're in a battle right now, in a battle, a tense battle. But it's important to know that God is with you and God will fight for you. He will give you the victory. And when he gives you the victory, you ought to just give God praise and just thank him for giving you the victory. I don't know about you, but I'm glad that God is in my life, and I'm glad that God is in the midst of trouble. I'm glad that God is in the midst of my battles. And when I go through whatever I go through, I know that I can depend. Am I the only one here today that knows that God is with them? Because greater is he that is within you than he that is within the world. God is awesome. We just finished singing, but God. And he was sitting here looking at me like, entertain me, preacher. The devil is a lie. You better get up here and praise God. The only reason why you are still here is because God was with you when you went through what you went through, and he will not only bring you over it, but he'll bring you through it. Somebody ought to give God praise in the house. Hallelujah. Don't sit down on God when God brings you through. That he's the one that delivers you. He's the one that opens the door. He's the one that keeps the enemy's hand from getting to you. If you don't believe me, ask Rob and ask Bianca. The bullet hit him, but it didn't kill him. Because God was right there fighting for them. God was the one stepping in. God was the one preventing anything else from happening. So David learned what it means to obey. He learned what it means to fight. He learns that the Lord gives the victory, but he also learned not to use another man's armor. Oh, good God. He learned not to use another man's armor. If you look at this in the text, verse 38 through 40. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass upon his head. Saul meant well, you know. He says, well, listen, I know that you're not that old, and you don't know nothing about war, so I know a little something, so why don't you use my armor? Then he put mine on you. And so this is what he did. He started putting them on him, bless his heart. He put a helmet of brass upon his head. Also, he armed him with a coat of mail, and David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off. I have to also put in verse 40 here. And he took his staff in his hand and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook and put them in a shepherd's bag, which he had, even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. David learned how to obey. He learned what it means to fight. He learned that the Lord gives the victory, but he also learned not to use another man's armor. You know, Saul thought he meant well, and he wanted David to have his armor. But David, look at David. Now, David is the same guy that had to look back over his life. And that's what you got to do every now and then. You got to rehearse the previous victories. Look and see what you did before and how God got you out and how God brought you through. And what he did then, he will do it again. Am I in the right house today to know that God, the God that we serve, he is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we could ever ask or think? And so here what happens is David realized, listen, I'm going to give all glory to God. And this big giant, I know he's a big dude, almost 10 feet tall. But you know what? I can't wear your uniform. I can't wear your helmet. Thank you, King. I appreciate it. But I got to take them off. See, that's the problem. Don't let anybody try to use their method for you. If you know that God is the one that gives the victory, you stand up for God and do what God told you to do.